This story is no fairy tale. It's recounted in an ancient mariner's diary and describes the beginning of the world as we know it. At that time, it was still a dark and largely unexplored place. And 15th century Portugal was a nation at the cutting edge of marine navigation, with an insatiable appetite for imperial expansion. In their eagerness to go where nobody had gone before, they dispatched Vasco da Gama. "500 years ago, he set sail from Portugal, destined to circumnavigate Africa and continue to India, into a sea of deepness and winds still to discover. His task was to establish trading posts wherever possible and convert Muslims to Christianity. His voyage marked the beginning of Portuguese colonization of many parts of Africa and India. They were met in places by hostile natives, Arabs, who resented the arrival of Christians on their shores. There were clashes of culture and faith. At times, the arrogance of the Portuguese provoked battles with the Muslims, and Vasco's men left on bad terms. The Portuguese were quick to fire their cannons, and as they sailed away, their monuments were sometimes destroyed. But Vasco was intrepid and would not be deterred. With the aid of a friendly Arab pilot, he guided his ships to India. Here, the Arabs had a monopoly on the spice trade, which the Portuguese were desperate to break. It meant Vasco must go on into unexplored worlds and discover where the rich spices were coming from. In 1960, to commemorate 5 centuries since the death of Prince Henry the Navigator, Lisbon honored the Portuguese contribution to maritime exploration. Portugal abounds with celebrations of this history, proud of their role in this key event, this meeting of cultures. It was the point where for the first time mankind learned the real nature of the world on which he lived. Their curiosity was huge. The decks of the ships were adorned with shapes and symbols, pilots and seafarers, poets and soldiers, geographers and mathematicians. They were in search of every knowledge, and the unknown world might offer answers to many important questions. As with space travel later, these journeys were hailed by the people, who could not imagine what might be discovered. The journeys began with Prince Henry's barges and caravels. The winds first took them to discover Madeira, an Atlantic island. But Henry was driven to know what lay beyond the Canaries and Morocco's famed Cape Boudoir. Later, these fears were conquered and the dark seas opened to reveal the islands of Cape Verde. The year was 1460. Further south, it's no longer just the lure of gold which feeds the commercial vessels. It's the promise of the richness of a continent yet unknown. Explorers' ships arrive at the Firth of Congo. Here, in the name of God, their religious fascination with the so-called African heathen spawns baptisms and conversions. Further on, Vasco's sailors face the darkness of the Cape, which in the end will become the waves of Good Hope. On the other side of the Cape, the crew is exhausted. Vasco decides to rest up. But around the same time, Pere de Colvila was sent from Portugal to spy on the Orient. With the sharp sense of a merchant, he notes places and spices. He travels to Goa and Ormuz and to Sofala to learn more about the southern seas and the coastal cities that prosper with commerce. Colvila meets many different people on his mission for the king. He makes a complete report, including gold mining in the interior. In Lisbon, the new King Manuel is crowned. And he too has an explorer's blood. He sends Vasco messages of encouragement, and Vasco decides it's time to set sail to conquer India. It was the culmination of centuries of work, with none more responsible than Portugal's Prince Henry, whose fascination with navigation, charts, maps and instruments, long before, had prepared the groundwork for this journey. He knew what he wanted to do, but had not had the means to carry out his dreams. But how did the boats stay together through journeys lasting years, through ferocious uncharted seas? Old shipwrecks reveal the vessels that undertook these epic journeys. They evolved from fishing boats which worked up and down the European coasts. Their construction was similar, but improved vastly with experience, both in design and woodwork. And of course, the ships are well armed, but with the dangers of mutiny, the sailors were not. Vasco's fleet boasts 4 ships, the São Rafael, São Gabriel, Berrio, and the São Martin. Vasco finally resumes his journey and puts to sea in a caravel, 3 small barges with square sails. Vasco's men are rested and ready to seek out India. The ships are weighed down with all that will be needed, packed into every free corner. Back in Portugal, news of the journey was always scarce, and the people waited with bated breath. But from Lisbon's Geronimo monastery, the religious hierarchy did not look so favorably on the voyage. A year before, King Manuel had asked the highest Catholic authority, the Santa Fe, for permission to build a monument to the voyage. Permission was given, but the monks were afraid man was stepping outside the narrow confines God had set for his existence. According to Portuguese literature, vigils, prayers, and promises took place before such trips, and many from the religious establishment cursed the glory of power and greed manifested with the boarding of a ship designed to set sail for places where God might not even exist. But amid supplications and tears, the sailors' sins are forgiven. How do we know about the trip that took Vasco da Gama